Welcome to the Ibstock Future Talks podcast, here with Suzannah Nichol OBE, Chief Executive of Build UK. Thank you very much for joining us. It's really great to have you here in the iStudio in London. I'd like to start. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Hello, well thank you very much for having me here. I am Suzannah Nichol. I'm the Chief Executive of Build UK, the leading and largest organisation in construction representing the industry.
Brilliant. And I'd love to start. How did you get into the construction industry?
I was, very simply, it was a couple of weeks' work experience for me. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to work outside. I love being outside. And I wanted to do something interesting. Doesn't everybody? And I did think at one point that I might join the military as a nurse. My mother's a nurse. I thought I might work in a nursery with children. And a friend's dad offered me a week's work experience in an estate agent. So I did the week in the nursery and went, oh, this is not for me. It's way too noisy. And went out with my friend's father on a week's work experience. And I have with me the letters that arranged that work experience here back in 1989, when I think I must have been probably lower sixth or fifth form, when every kid in the country did work experience. Yeah. And he took me out looking around people's homes, as an estate agent would. But one of the trips we went on was we walked out onto a construction site that was building new homes. And the moment I set foot on that site, I just knew I'd found something that I wanted to do. So the environment was great, it was interesting, there was a lot going on, it was outside. And I remember going home to my parents and saying, right, I'd quite like to work in construction, please. And they had no idea what to do with that. It was obviously before the days of the internet. So they helped me research what I could do, and it started from there, really.
And what was the family reaction to you in your sixth form suddenly going, I'm nursing, nursery, construction?
I think my parents have always been reasonably open-minded, and as long as there was a plan, they didn't really mind what it was. The big challenge for all of us was, what does that mean? What are the jobs in construction? Where do we go? We obviously found a way through. I went and applied to a couple of companies for sponsorship. I got offered both of them. I was probably a rarity back then, both in handwriting a letter asking for sponsorship, but also being a female interested in getting into construction. And I took one of those with the Lovell Group and toddled off to Liverpool University to do a construction management degree, and they sponsored me to do it.
And when you got that degree, how many other women were on your degree?
There were 4 of us, and I'm the only one that stayed in construction. They all did a little bit of something, but I'm the only one that I'm aware of that's still in construction.
Out of how many on the course?
4 girls. I think there was probably about 30 of us on the course.
Yeah. Why did you choose that particular degree? Why Liverpool? What sort of got you there?
I looked at the courses that did, my course was called Construction Management and Technology, so it was a bit of all-round construction management, a bit of engineering, a bit of surveying. So I looked at 3 universities, one in Scotland, didn't fancy going to Scotland, it was a bit far, one in Salford, and I didn't really know where that was, and Liverpool University. And I went up to Liverpool University to have a look round, and again just loved it. Really nice feel, liked the university, liked the sound of the course, and so I applied and they accepted me.
Quite unusual, because what I've certainly seen over my career is a lot of people come into the industry because of a family connection, be it parents, aunties, uncles, and certainly something you see a lot in the trades. So very, very different to come in. Any other family in the industry, or were you a fresh start for construction for your family?
Before today, I would have said I'm a fresh start for construction. My father was a police officer, my mother was a nurse, so a very service-orientated family. No real construction, any relatives, or even family friends, I would say, in construction. So it was completely new for all of us. But I have, looking through some family records, I have since found out, and I feel like I've got the evidence of my life here, Andrew. I found out that my paternal great-grandfather actually worked at the Round Oak Steelworks Limited, which I think is now the Merry Hill Centre in Dudley. And I believe, whilst all the paperwork's about the steelworks, I believe he was a bricklayer. So I've got information here about when he was working kind of, just after the Second World War, 1947 and 1950 on this bit of paperwork. So it's clearly in the blood, it's clearly in our family history. And I've also heard my dad talk about one of his uncles who actually had something to do with the development of the Breeze Block. So it's in the family somewhere, but no direct connections. Nothing when I was growing up saying, that's the career for me, and literally until I walked out on the building site.
And when you are out in your role as Build UK, looking at what's happening in the industry, what's attracting young people in? What's putting young people off? What do we need to do as organisations to get more people into our industry?
We have loads of young people who want to work in construction. We often talk about the need to attract the next generation, getting more people involved. But I know from talking to our members, they are massively oversubscribed for their apprenticeship places, their graduate places. So I don't believe we have an attraction problem. As Build UK, we run a programme called Open Doors, where our members open their construction projects across the country. And we had about 7,000 young people through the doors earlier this year in March. And when they've been out and seen construction, so we have no problem attracting people to come and look. And when they walk off their site visit, or they may go and see a factory, they may go and see an office, it's something like 88% say they would consider a career in construction. We don't have a problem attracting people to come and work in our industry. Our challenge is offering them a job that they see as a stable, secure, long-term career option, that we then give them that pattern of knowing what their next step is going to be, knowing where they're going to end up, and a job that they can go to every day and go, right, well, I can see where my earnings are going to be. I can see that I'm going to be able to buy my house. We don't have enough jobs that we offer to those young people to come into our industry and stay in our industry.
What I've seen in the industry, and looking what has happened elsewhere, over the last 25, 30 years, the construction industry has offered hundreds of different degree apprenticeships and actually been brilliant at it. And you're now starting to see other industries embrace the same. So you're seeing more people in law, finance, accountancy actually embracing it. And particularly with the cost of entry into university, it's a really great thing. We offer apprenticeships. We think they're really, really important and part of our business and getting people into it. And I think what I would echo is we do see lots of attraction for it. Sometimes the challenge is retaining people.
Yes.
Giving them that stability and keeping the roles. And actually, I think sometimes the challenge every organisation has is actually creating that long-term visibility on and particularly when you're project-based, actually you've got that dynamic. Some people embrace that and some people don't. So it's interesting to see how some people are adapting and changing over time. And I think maybe that'd be part of the change of the industry we see over the next few years. If I was asking you where do you think the industry is today, what would be your state of the nation?
I think it's a great industry, and I completely endorse what you say about degree apprenticeships. And I think if I had my time again, I did a kind of early degree apprenticeship as a sponsored student. I had a supporting employer, I worked every summer holidays, and I went to university, and they gave me money to do that, relatively small amount, and I think I did go skiing on it rather than buying any books. So I think in terms of, as an industry, there's so much opportunity. So many people work in our industry. It's about 3 million. 1 in 10 of the working population works in construction. And you don't have to be project-based. You don't have to be site-based. So we offer a huge range of opportunities, excitement. Even just talking about the industry, I love what we do. But we could be brilliant as an industry. We are still quite traditional. We are not adopting, people would say digital or technology, but smarter ways of working from really low level to some very sophisticated things. It's in pockets. Some people doing brilliant things. Our biggest challenge on that is we're all trying to do it differently. And where you see people move so much faster with pace and velocity as an industry is where they all lean in a bit more and say, this is the technology we're going to focus on and this is what we're going to use. If we did that, we would move much faster and those young people coming in would know what we're doing and what we're offering. At the moment, every project and every site, it's slightly different. You think how frustrated you get. I get frustrated when I go into a different car park and it's a different app to pay my £3. We do that on everything. So the state of the industry, I could talk about loads of things, but we are still an industry that everybody likes to row their own boat rather than saying, what are our big ticket items that if we all lent in and did, we would be so much smarter, so much faster. I think we would then have the opportunity to offer more of those jobs, more of those long-term careers, and people would know where they stand. We're a little bit too disjointed still.
And what do you think those enablers are? What are those one or two things that you think could make the difference?
In terms of the particular tech, we need a grown-up conversation to say what's working really well, what isn't working, and get away from the not invented here. I didn't choose it. We need to sit around a table and say, what are you using that is brilliant? How do more of us do that? But what would drive that is actually, as an industry, having that future pipeline of work. So the answer to almost every question is how does the industry become smarter is pipeline, pipeline, pipeline.
So it's fantastic to see the government publish their pipeline, 750 billion plus of work for the next 10 years. It feels like that is a great opportunity for people to invest. We invest heavily in our 32 factories. Seeing that pipeline of work takes a bit of pressure off us because you can see where you're going to put the products that you're making. Do you see other parts of the industry investing now that pipeline's out?
It's early days. Obviously, the ambition is yes, of course, and we worked really hard with the Treasury, both on the infrastructure strategy and then the pipeline. And I was really pleased. We went into the Treasury showing that what could be done on a pipeline, what could give the industry confidence. And there's two levels of pipeline. There's kind of the £750 billion worth of work, but the next level down is that work that I'm going to win in my region that I can employ people to do. So that confidence, that glimmer of what we can do is there. Key now is delivery, delivery, delivery. So we have to start seeing those projects and programs that are on the pipeline starting to become reality. And we've obviously had some good announcements recently with Sizewell C was confirmed. You can start to see things like that taking shape. But we have to now help the industry convert that into, it's not a list over here, it's actually projects in my area that I need to gear up for. And I think we need to start seeing that next step, but it's definitely given people the foresight to say, well, there is £750 billion of work. That is more than we've had sight of before. We are going to be delivering that. We've got a government that is homes and infrastructure all the way. I've not seen that for a long time. We have been inside government more in the last year talking about homes and infrastructure and things actually happening than the previous 5 years.
Does that present a risk? So the counter to that is, does that make it more politically wary? Where we see that, we have an election cycle, we have political cycles. Does it create a concern that actually it becomes more of a political hot potato, or do you think the IPA being there, taking some of the politics out of big infrastructure helps?
Absolutely helps, and obviously bringing the IPA and the National Infrastructure Commission together into NISTA, construction does love an acronym, but bringing those together so you've got those responsible for oversight and delivery together should stand us in good stead. The strategy is 10-year, So the idea is it isn't short term, and a lot of the work is now programmed. So once you start moving on it, the ambition is we keep going. The kind of that slight reticence, nervousness is we saw that with HS2, where literally when you take out a big project like that companies had invested, they'd done that, they geared up for it. And it's not just that project, it is all the spin-off work that comes because there's a railway coming, because there's a station coming, all that private investment. So it's not just about public investment. What I'd really like to see now is all that private sector investment, because there's an awful lot of that, is how do we present that and add that to the pipeline? So it's not just the 750 billion. You can see the Mansion House Accord from the pension funds investment, all the other commitments. How do we set that out that says to construction, there is enough work for all of you, and we've got some confidence it's going to be delivered. So you're not going to win everything, but there is enough here for everybody. And that's how you start to shift the dial and move it forward.
One of the challenges we hear from customers, ultimate clients, the people that are building the projects, the people commissioning the projects, is that cost has gone up exponentially over the last few years. So if you look at the cost of building projects that are replicable over the last 5 years, the cost has almost doubled for some of those. So we have had inflation, we have had the war in Ukraine, we have had COVID, so there have been a lot of headwinds, but actually that's made a lot of previously viable projects less viable, and that's been one of the barriers I've heard a few times as to why things aren't going forward. Do you think that's an industry problem? What do you think is driving that?
A lot of the costs that end up being imposed on construction come from government policy, layers of taxes, levies, where for some reason, whilst the government wants to talk about infrastructure and homes and recognises we want and need to build more and maintain. It's not just about new infrastructure, it's about making what we've got work. At the same time, they seem to be under the illusion that construction can bear more and more cost. And if we want to see the infrastructure and the homes delivered, if we want to see growth in the economy, at some point, those imposing the levies have to realise that that is adding the cost. So it's not just inflation, which is the external factors. It is things that government is doing to us that they don't need to. They can drive the same outcomes, better placemaking, better biodiversity, better infrastructure, by having a much smarter strategy and a pipeline which drives the right behaviours. Just adding more and more layers of taxes and levies, actually we just stop building, because there is only one place the money comes from. If the government's funding construction and is then charging a levy, we as the taxpayer, on houses, you are seeing on homes, it's literally stagnated because it is no longer financially viable, and private investors and developers who fund a lot of the housing are just saying, we just can't do this anymore. So and we are having that conversation with Treasury, with Mr. At some point, if you want growth, you've got to allow the industry to be unleashed to deliver that growth. The more cost you put on it, the less likely you are to build.
It does feel today like the industry is sat there really, there's a wall of capital, there's a wall of bricks, we've got hundreds of bricks, we've got workers, everyone's ready to go out and do those projects. They're just not happening yet. Yeah. And you've seen profit warnings, you've seen people sort of really paring back, but construction is such a growth engine for the economy. The multiplier is fantastic.
The multiplier is amazing, and a lot of it's local because it employs local people, it delivers value in the built asset, and we often or don't seem to realise, or I think we realise, the construction cost is a tiny part of the whole asset, yet that's where everything gets squeezed, and we start talking about $1 million here. That's quite a big number, I'm not just saying, just a million, but $1 million here, or even 100 million here, whereas over the lifetime of an asset, it will generate way more than that, yet we put all the squeeze in the construction side of it, and we are a really good multiplier. It's almost £3 return for every £1 invested in construction. We're a good employer, we train people, we skill people, and you give something back. It's not like others where it may be a service that you can or cannot do that. You cannot do without good infrastructure. And at some point, and I think we're starting to see it now, demonstrated by housing has just stopped. The headwinds, as you rightly call them, are just almost one too many, and people then go, I'm going to go invest in something else. One developer once said to me, it's about getting a return on their capital. So if they're going to get more investing, they'll go and invest in a racehorse rather than construction. And at the moment, that balance is in other things rather than construction for a whole range of reasons.
I think it's quite interesting. When you look at infrastructure, we still use Brunel's railway today. There was a disaster at the time, was over budget, was late, and was a real problem. But yet that provides capacity to move people around the country efficiently in a sustainable way. And when you look at projects like HS2, they're not 25-year, they're not 40-year projects, they're 200-300-year projects. And I think the government mentality has to break out of that a bit, and it feels like maybe that message gets lost on these big infrastructure projects. Maybe there's a lack of courage there as well.
Bravery, but I also then think that those buying the project have to be much more grown up about putting in all the legwork and understanding the true value of construction. It is not cheap to build, maintain infrastructure, we know that. On the flip side, you look at the Elizabeth line is now the most popular tube line, the most travelled tube line, but you think out of the way people talked about Crossrail. So I think maybe one of the tricks is to have a working name and then an operational name, because everyone's forgotten that the Elizabeth line was Crossrail.
I think 1 in 7 rail journeys now are made on that one line.
And it's beautiful. You walk down, it's like walking into, I don't know, the best art exhibit. It's absolutely beautiful if you like construction. But it's that long term, people making decisions today for their children and their grandchildren. And we have as a society become more and more short term. I want the return now. And so we have to change the narrative. And I do think the current government, and I see it in Darren Jones in the Treasury, they talk about a 10-year strategy. They talk about infrastructure fit for the future. You talk about the trains. You look at the sewage system, our water system. It is crumbling because we haven't invested in it, yet it's one of the most important things to us as a society. So we need to change the narrative and have a much bigger conversation about, people would call it whole life cost and whole life value. I think part of the challenge, we use words that people then go, I don't really understand. I would struggle to explain that to somebody. When you talk about what you're building now, how many railway journeys, how many hospital beds it's going to give, how long it's going to be, and it's not about here and now. It's about our children, it's about our grandchildren, and it's about their grandchildren. Some of our infrastructure, we are laying down the framework for whatever is going to be in the future.
What do you see the role of Build UK in? It's a big business. You've been around for 10 years now. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And you from someone looking at it, it looks like you're doing some really exciting work, touching government at the right points, getting the right engagement. So how do you see the role of Build UK both today and into the future? How do you see that over the next 10 years?
I would say we do 2 core things. The first one is to bring the industry together to represent itself externally to stakeholders, which might be government, it might be somebody like the CITB, it will be to communities, but it is about to demonstrate the value of construction. And as a society, we take buildings for granted. We kind of come out the tube, which is phenomenal, up the steps, we go onto the road, you've got round, everything you do every day, we have built. So it's about demonstrating, and that costs. People think that construction can just be thrown up, or, why are they taking so long? Because what we do is really, really important. So it's about bringing the industry together to talk on behalf, and we've demonstrated navigating COVID, the way we are navigating the building safety regime from behalf of the industry, the way we responded to things like the collapse of ISG, to events such as that, whether we do that as Build UK or as part of the Construction Leadership Council. So that's part of it. The other part, and the bit that is the more exciting part, is to get the industry match fit. What game are we playing? Where are we playing it? What kit are we playing? And do we all know the bit that we're really good at, everybody on that pitch, and make sure we are doing it to the best of our ability? And that's the bit where we've got more potential, more opportunity. The industry can do so much itself. It doesn't need to say, if only government did this, if only they did that. Actually, the industry could say, if we did this, we would be more efficient, more productive, we would all make more money, our people would be safe, we could build more stuff, the stuff we're really, really good at. So that getting match fit is the bit that as Build UK we pride ourselves on, resolving those issues that stop us from doing the things that we should be able to do as an industry.
Do you think from your independent position that your ability to convene is an important part? Because you talked earlier about not invented here and everyone being a little bit protective, but by not being a client, not being government, not being construction, do you think that gives you a bit of an advantage there?
It's absolutely our role. I would say is our USP is we've got skin in the game in terms of getting the industry to be fantastic, amazing, and bigger and better, because then it becomes more productive, more financially viable. You know, win all round. That is what we do, is that convener, that honest broker. And the real value of what we do is we've got all parts of the supply chain around the table, and that's where we're a bit different. It is no good championing one part of the supply chain, because if only one part wants it and there is resistance elsewhere, you are never going to achieve it. And that's what we saw before Build UK. It's one of the reasons why we created Build UK, because you then work out what moves everybody forward. Because if you're at opposite ends of the spectrum, then it's constantly, it's a win-lose, and it's not. It's a win-win game. So I like to think that's exactly what we do, and we've demonstrated that in some of the work that we've done.
It is one of the challenges I see in the industry is the length of the supply chain. The tail is incredibly long. From the customers to the main contractors to the tier one subcontractors, all the way through down the subcontractor through to manufacturers like ourselves, and actually, you know, suppliers to us. You've got a very long group of people involved, lots of different vested interests. How do you think we can get that alignment between all of those people? What is there a magic bullet, or is it the bigger picture of the bigger prize? What do you think? If
there was a magic bullet, I'd be firing it now. I often talk about the Build UK, the Build UK magic wand. What would I do? We often talk ourselves into, you know, oh, the industry's fragmented, it's so big. Actually, we all want the same thing. Ultimately, most people want to run successful, viable businesses that keep our people safe, build great stuff, and we make a bit of money along the way. So whilst the supply chain can be quite long, quite diverse, because the way, certainly since the 70s and the 80s, people have become much more specialist, which is a strength. It can be a superpower. It doesn't have to be a weakness. But ultimately, where we win is where we all say, is that where we want to get to? And then we look at who does what best, and they focus on that to deliver to that end goal. And you're back to part of our challenge is people go, I want to get there, but I want to do it in my way. And actually, we have to start saying, but actually that doesn't help. If everybody rows their own boat, we don't go very far. If we all jump in one boat on a cruise liner, whew, there's cocktails all around, and we're off to New York. So that's a mindset change. It's a bit of a mind shift to say, how could we all go faster and not lose anything? And I am constantly amazed why would you want to reinvent the wheel? Well, I know the answer to that, because it's actually quite difficult to do the right thing. It's much easier to sit in a committee room or write a report about what you should do than implement some of the harder things that have been in every report since Michael Latham back in 1994. Is
that a leadership problem?
I think we've got some really good leaders in our sector. I talked about we're a large industry, we touch every part of society. So I don't believe we'll ever have leaders of the industry, which everybody gets behind. It's more about a direction of travel and not being precious about everybody trying to lead the same thing. Work out what your strengths are, play your part, and collectively we move forward. So from small businesses to large businesses, we've got really good people in our industry, people who lead within their businesses. Actually, we need to turn that out and say, I don't have to lead the whole industry. I have to lead my bit. It might be just lead my business down that direction. I don't have to try and lead everybody. And I think we get a bit confused between a leader of the industry versus being really good leaders within your business, within your sector, and leading by example.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how you've got businesses that have aligned behind your group at Build UK and ploughing their own furrows within that, but actually supporting the wider agenda. And I think that's part of the big opportunity. What have you seen of late? I see your LinkedIn posts from factories all over the place. You get to speak to lots of exciting people. What have you seen over the last 12 months that's really excited you?
Cool, that's a tricky one, because almost every day I speak to somebody or see something and I think, oh my goodness, we are really good at pockets. And it's back to that, joining up. I often say part of our job is joining dots. What have I seen? I love being out on construction sites and seeing people being smarter. I was out I mentioned Open Doors earlier, and I got the chance to go to Old Oak Common, the HS2 site. Oh my goodness, that was absolutely amazing. But even on that project, you saw, I think, the largest crane, which I do like a crane, and it was fantastic. It was huge. But then at the other end of it, there was somebody on their hands and knees knocking the tops off little plastic toppers, there will be a technical name for it, off the reinforcement bar, and they were doing it on their hands and knees. And my brain couldn't quite match the two. And I actually sat and spoke to him and said, well, what on earth are you doing, my friend? And he said, there is a machine, but I don't really like using it. Yeah. And that quite excited me, both about the fact that he spent 8 hours a day, honestly, which can't be good for him. There is a machine, but somehow we hadn't quite connected the two. And I suspect there's all kinds of reasons out. So it excited me being out on HS2, but also the potential that we've got there. I also went up to one of our members' factory environments where they are looking at industrialising construction. And that was fantastic. The passion, the excitement, the just everything going on in that factory environment was really exciting. And I believe that that's not for everything in construction. A huge part of what we do is repair, maintenance, refurbishment. That's never going to come out of a factory. So it comes back to, where are we doing the right thing and doing it brilliantly? It's a scale. Everybody says, MMC is the way to go. Well, it is for certain things. Let's maximise it there. It isn't over here. So let's not isolate them by saying it's all got to be factory made when it hasn't. You yourself, you will operate as Ibstock across that huge spectrum of things that are manufactured right up here down to bricks that are laid individually by hand on top of each other on site. And there's going to always be a place for both of them.
I think MMC's been sort of seen, and I have lots of T-shirts when it comes to MMC, have been seen as a bit of a panacea. It is a solution to some of the problems the industry faces. It is not, it's not that magic bullet. It is a great solution in certain areas, is certainly my view on things.
I completely agree with that, absolutely.
Thinking about your position, you've been CEO now for 10 years at Build UK. What would you say has been the biggest challenge you've faced in that leadership role?
Where do you start?
COVID?
Before that. Creating Build UK was an interesting challenge. Bringing the contracting supply chain together when people sat there and said, oh, you'll never do that. Well, we did. Grenfell, I think, is a pretty low point for the industry. We then had Carillion. Kind of before and throughout that, we had Brexit. Then COVID, but the industry stepped up marvellously. But we had also, as Build UK, been 5 years coming together. So we were positioned perfectly positioned, I think. We don't trust of people, we knew people, so we were able to do that. Coming off the back of that, you then had hyperinflation with the war in Ukraine. We've had a bit more Brexit, Grenfell and the whole building safety regime throughout all of that, the collapse of ISG. So lots of big ticket items that massively influence the industry, the way it behaves and what we have to do as Build UK. But also loads of other little things that almost everything affects our industry. We are so big and we touch everything that I watch the news and think, oh crikey, that's my tomorrow gone, because there's something else. So whatever you're looking at on the news, whether it's tariffs that affects our or the steel that we use, it will affect you with all your material costs. Immigration, the visas, every single thing has an impact. And what we have to determine is, what is our role? We can't respond to everything. And on some of it, it almost doesn't matter how you respond, it's not going to make the difference. And that's the trick we have to perform is this something we are best placed to deal with, and will it make an impact? Or is this something that we're not the right people to deal with? They are, we'll get behind them. Or it's not something we're going to influence. But almost every day you look at the inheritance tax, a lot of our members are family firms. A lot of construction in the supply chain, you mentioned earlier family and friends, a lot of individuals have set up their own business, and it is kind of the heart of construction, is that family-owned business. They are massively affected by the inheritance tax changes, to the point where we might not have those family firms going forward, and I kind of don't quite know what the outcome.
It's interesting because with the farming tax, it's been called the farming tax, but it actually applies equally to any sort of family-owned business or business assets. So we've not had the benefit of the publicity I've seen, certainly with the farming tax, but it is a real problem. Just to finish, what's the reason to be hopeful? What's the exciting thing? What's coming down the pipe that we should all be looking forward to?
We've got £750 billion worth of infrastructure to build. The spotlight is on construction. We need homes. You could have a debate over the number, but the fact that there is an ambition to build more homes, and as well as the 1.5 million target that people talk about, there is a commitment to retrofit 5 million homes. That's a lot more than 1.5 million new homes. Infrastructure people are talking about. It's right at the heart of government strategy. We need infrastructure. We are not going to have water to drink, or certainly not water that we want to drink, if we do not fix our water infrastructure. You've just seen the success of Tideway. So you can see brilliance. We've got Sizewell, we've got nuclear, we need more energy, we're all using more data. So what's to come? Well, without infrastructure, the world doesn't work. So there is huge opportunity. So you come back to getting the industry match fit to capitalise on that, and stop faffing around about writing a new policy that's not going to make a difference, and focus on getting our people competent and in that kit and at the starting line to deliver that infrastructure. Those apprentices coming through who are bright-eyed and are our future, focusing on creating those jobs and creating that work is much more exciting, and our huge potential and opportunity, than looking at all the little things around the edges that don't make the difference.
Suzannah, thank you ever so much. It's been great to talk to you. I could probably sit for hours and hours and try and put the world to right, but really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.